Thanks everyone for joining us in this edition of Face live event. I'm so happy and delighted to have Rajeev Shukla, the CEO of Castellum Labs, joining us today for a very important topic called Demystifying DevSecOps. So thanks, Rajeev, for taking your time and spending some effort with us. And hope you're doing well and staying safe.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for inviting me into this event.
Excellent. So, Rajeev, we wanted to get your perspective around this whole initiative of DevSecOps. There's a lot of misconceptions. So, why don't you give us a rundown on what is all about DevSecOps? Who is it intended? Is it intended for everyone? Why is it so complex? How to create a roadmap. So run us through a practical scenario of your experience in the last so many years, the trends of it. It'll be useful. So if you can share the presentation, that will be of great help. Yeah.
Sure. So I have a deck. I have a presentation which I'll be going through, and DevSecOps is something which has been probably the most talked about in the last decade, and then also probably the most misunderstood term and practice in the industry. So hopefully today's session is going to demystify some of the common myths which are prevalent in the industry.
Sure.
So let me share the screen, and please let me know when you can see the screen.
Sure.
Suresh, is my presentation visible?
Just a minute. Just trying to see. One minute. I'm just trying to see the presentation. Which board? Okay. So, right. So, Rajeev, I think you're sharing your add to stream. I need to add to the stream. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
I think now we should be okay. Sharing. Go ahead, Rajeev.
Okay. So you can see the presentation, correct?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Right. Okay. So it's going to be, it will be a number of things talked about today. And it's a lot actually trying to demystify something like DevSecOps in 30 minutes. There's a lot to handle, but let's take a look at some of the key points. So I'm going to skip, I have been in the industry, for more than 25 years. A lot of experience in cybersecurity, specifically in the complex part of the cybersecurity. So things like DevSecOps, things like complex SOC infrastructures, things like advanced threat intelligence. And I've been fortunate to be on the both sides of the world. I've been fortunate to be a practitioner, and I've also been fortunate to create the technology which is used for various cybersecurity things. And application security is something which is close to my heart. We have done a lot of stuff I've done a lot of stuff in the last decade and a half. As part of my new journey in the last 3.5 years, we have done some phenomenal things in application security. And DevSecOps is something which we practice. We offer that as a solution to the industry. So let's take a look at, before we talk about the DevSecOps, let's actually take a look at the state of vulnerabilities for when it comes to web application or mobile application or APIs. So some of the stark figures. One thing is, if you look at first 2 months of 2020, 20,000 is the number of times an average web application was actually targeted. Right? That seems like an unreal number, but this is the number. Because of the bot attacks, because of the automated infrastructures, the number of attacks on the web applications is very, very large. And then if you look at the right-hand side of the slide, there are 18,000 total number of software vulnerabilities. Now, these are the known vulnerabilities in the open source software or the vendor software, the branded, off-the-shelf type of vendor software. So these are the known number of vulnerabilities published in just 1 year. So that gives you an idea about what is the state of vulnerabilities and what is the state of how common it is for web applications and mobile applications and APIs to be targeted. Now let's take a look at another. Dimension. Right? More than 35% of the vulnerabilities in the software in any organization, they're either critical or high. Right? So a lot of organizations, they really have. This is something which is startling, but a lot of organizations, they wouldn't think that more than 35% of the vulnerabilities in their organization, in their software surface, they would be either critical or high. Right? So this is another fact that amount of critical and high vulnerabilities is very, very high in majority of the companies out there. Let's take a look at another important thing. The fact is that for majority of the organizations, it takes more than 75 days. On an average, it takes more than 75 days to address a vulnerability. Right?
Wow.
Now this is something which is looking at how much money has been spent on penetration testing in the last decade and a half. Right? And looking at how frequently companies they get the VAPT done for their web application and mobile applications and APIs. This is an incredible number. Taking 75 days to address a vulnerability into their software surface. I mean, that's a huge window which is being left for cyber criminals to try and attack you. Right? So these are the three most important things before we start looking at why DevSecOps and what is DevSecOps and why DevSecOps.
Sure.
Now, Suresh, did you have a point?
No, I think it is really staggering when you think about 75 days. I don't know how organization can thrive at this rate. It's my biggest worry.
Correct. So mean time to repair is just an extremely is extremely big. I mean, it's like 75 days is just an incredible amount of time to address a vulnerability. I mean, that's a huge window for cyber criminals, the bot infrastructures, and a lot of other state actors to actually try exploiting your web surface or software surface. Okay. Now let's take a look at what organizations are really doing. I mean, what organizations have been doing for the last 20 years, particularly what organizations are doing in the last 10 years. Right? So, so despite what we talked about in the last 3 slides, the fact is that majority of the organizations, they're still doing the application security only as a hygiene factor. Right?
Right.
Now, when I say hygiene factor, what does it mean? It means that there's no testing during the development. There is no effort investment in security testing during the development cycle. Second is that quite many organizations, they actually do only one test related to security. Actually, not even the test. I can't call it a test. They do only one set of activity during the later stages of quality. Right? And then the organizations where the controls are slightly better, right? A gray box testing is actually conducted before the software is released into the production, right? So if I look at the state of industry, that majority, almost 80% to 85% of the organization, they're still doing the application security as a hygiene factor, not as something which is strategic and which has to align with their development environment or the development life cycle. Right? So what it does, I mean, so first of all, let's take a look at, let's understand why is it. So one, it is easy because it needs no planning. If you got 30 If you have 30 softwares running in the organization, you have a very simple mechanism that, okay, before the software goes into production, I'm going to conduct a security testing. I'll create a checklist. I'll create a vulnerability list, and if something is critical, I'll try pushing back to a development organization, and I'm done. Right. So one of the reasons that it is easy, and it actually needs no effort in planning and creating a program, a structure. Second is, generally it is easily bought by the development organization with least amount of friction, because, when you go back to the development organization and try doing multiple time testing, and then obviously there's a negotiation, you might have to sort of, get development organization to buy into your proposition. But if you're going back to a development organization and saying that I'm going to do one testing when you're done with it and your entire development and quality cycle, that is, generally easily bought by development organization. But the problem it causes is that one is that the time you have got for security testing is not good enough. The whole testing is compressed into certain number of days. Majority of the organization, when they get the gray box testing done at the tail end of the cycle in a staging area, they generally don't get more than 3 days or 4 days to really conduct the whole testing, identify the vulnerabilities, and report back to development. Second thing is vulnerabilities identified by the security team. Generally, even if you're at that stage, if you're identifying the vulnerabilities, the likelihood of those vulnerabilities getting accepted by development team and getting fixed within the same release is very, very low. Right? So that's another challenge, that even if you find high severity or critical severity vulnerability, unless you have got a very strong in the organization, likelihood is that development organization is going to come back to you and say, we're going to deal with this vulnerability. We understand this vulnerability, but we're going to deal with this vulnerability in the next release of the cycle, not in this one because we don't have the time.
Right.
And the last thing is that, security testing, when it is getting done at the tail end of the cycle, the tail end of the release, you are almost doing a blindfold model testing. You really don't have a context and the insight into how software was developed. You don't really have the time to develop a proper, threat model for the software. Right? So what you're doing is a sort of a blindfold penetration testing. Right? So Suresh, this is something which is which surprises me. Because even today, majority of the testing is just a hygiene factor. Right?
And people, I think, Rajeev, what they happen is they think that the tools will do all the magic. So they are thinking about investing on tools and factors without even knowing whether the tool will, what are we trying to achieve as part of the goal?
Correct.
So
Correct.
Is there a part of the conversation that they really are not taking this seriously? Are they missing the whole understanding of their own security postures, or their understanding of the whole space of the cyber security, cyber threat landscape? What do you think has been the place?
So I think one of the major issue is related to I actually have some of this covered in the forthcoming slide, but one of the issues is related to not really having a full grasp of how big a threat the software surface gaps are causing, software surface vulnerabilities are causing. Right? So if I look at the amount of money and time which is spent on network security, right? If I look at amount of time and money which is spent on the SOC monitoring, that's huge as compared to the software security. So one of the reasons is that clear understanding of how big a threat a vulnerability on the software surface is, that clear understanding and a firm stand around it doesn't exist in the software in the industry as of now, right? And things are changing, but again, this is realizing the full impact of the how damaging a software vulnerability could be, and then going about creating a transformational model where software security could be taken beyond hygiene factor. It's quite a bit of an effort. So industry is in the midst of the shift, but the shift needs a lot of help. Right?
Absolutely.
Right. Now let's take a look at the reality of the software delivery today. What is really happening. So the fact is that majority of the organization, they are under pressure. They have been under pressure for the last 2 decades, but they're more than ever under pressure to deliver features almost in the real time, on a real time basis. So nobody wants to hear that these two specific capabilities, they will get delivered on the platform after 6 months. Today, businesses, they don't have that type of waiting capability. Today, businesses, they want to deliver a new feature as soon as the feature is actually available. Now, that is something which has been made possible specifically in the last 7-8 years. I mean, if you look at the kind of evolution which have happened in the DevOps infrastructure. And, so in the past, I mean, almost a decade ago, if you look at what really stopped companies from doing rapid release of the features into the market or into the production was complexity of the DevOps, or an inability of the DevOps to handle things fast enough.
Right.
So, but in the last decade, I mean, if you look at how many things, how DevOps has evolved, how things like very advanced tools, they are really making the fabric of the DevOps, the fabric of your release infrastructure, right? Infrastructure as a service, making deployment super simple. Right?
Correct.
If you want to actually have an additional computing capacity, you don't really have to demand it. It's going to be there when you need it. Right? That's what is infrastructure as a service. Microservice architecture, that again has sort of made DevOps absolutely on the forefront. In the past, if you wanted a new feature, and if that feature could have been deployed as a microservice, if that feature had to be built into the monolithic application, you needed a downtime of the application. But with the microservice architecture, you don't even need the downtime. You could actually roll out the new feature almost in running live application. So this is the reality of the software delivery today, that organizations, they have got the infrastructural capacity and capability to really push out the features almost in real time, almost on a daily basis. I mean, if I look at the e-commerce platform across the world, I don't know of any e-commerce platform across the world which does not do multiple releases of the software into their production on a daily basis. Right. So that is how things have changed. That's how software delivery has changed in the last decade. Now, in the context of that, let's see what it takes to secure the software. If you take a look at the left-hand part of this slide, these are the things which are needed to be done if you really want to deliver the secure software. Right? Now, in the context of how software delivery has changed, in the last decade, and how things have become real time, doing all of these 9 activities at the tail end of the release cycle, it is completely losing relevancy. So the people who are trying to do a penetration testing at the tail end of a release cycle, or right before things they hit the production, it actually has got no relevancy. It doesn't make any sense. And the funny part is that, in fact, there is no final build. There is no tail. If you look at the model, if you look at the software delivery model today, there is nothing called tail end. Every build which is coming out is qualified to be deployable. Right at the time of when the build is ready. So there's nothing called tail end on which you're gonna conduct a security testing and find the issues and try getting them fixed. Right. So. Suresh, this is what this is the biggest gap I see in the industry. The people, they are trying to do these 9 activities as one single atomic unit at one specific gating factor, but there is no gate. Because your software is getting delivered every day. If your software is getting delivered every day, then how can you actually define that I'm going to do the testing at this particular milestone?
Correct. No, I think this is a very valid slide to get through this holistically, right? You made a very good point, Rajeev, in terms of the whole pipeline. Now, a lot of these 9 aspects, are they all integrated, Rajeev, in the way that you see within the pipeline itself from a shift left perspective to the end? Or do you see most of the organizations trying to find out, well, we have to do this one, let's give it to the InfoSec or governance and risk and compliance team to do that? Where is because of the development that is already moving faster, Do you
Correct.
think these organizations or the groups are also collaborating from the beginning to make this 9 work more as an integrated approach?
So, in it has started happening to in the for the organization who have not really matured to a point where they take all of these 9 activities and they try spreading. I mean, the job is to take these 9 activities and try basically spreading these activities in conjunction with the development. How the development is really happening. In alignment to your development activities. So these activities ideally should not be seen, as something which is going to get done off the development cycle or off the development process. So
Right.
organizations, they started realizing it. They've started sort of realizing the need of getting these 9 activities done in conjunction and in alignment to what is happening in the development. But again, this because it needs a fundamental shift in thinking. It needs CIOs and the CISOs to come together, right? Enable each other in accomplishing it. It is still is not happening. It's happening, but it's not happening with enough pace. I mean, I see if I look at how many organizations they are trying to integrate all of these 9 activities throughout their development cycle, probably less than 20% of the industry is really making a conscious effort of doing that.
Correct. And most of the, also with the compliance part, Rajiv, in terms of ISO 27001 or 22301, it becomes more about just for the sake of compliance and tick in the box
Correct.
towards holding a certification, as opposed to really doing it in the spirit of the game. If you look at
Correct.
the whole security intent, because it's not just the prerogative of the chief information security officer or the governance of the board, but really everybody in the value chain, or do they resonate with the same level of intent to protect
Yes.
not only their client data, their employee data, but also the reputation and branding of a
Right.
company. Like think about the SolarWinds hack as a
Correct.
classic example of the level of impact it has created.
Correct.
Is huge. And even on top of that, with the level of vulnerabilities and threats that are looming high,
Correct.
people are paranoid. In my opinion, my last discussion with the CXO is said, CISO is already a part of the board. And every conversation on a quarterly review meeting with the governance board is, how secure are we in? I mean, can you kind of justify that you are well prepared to handle any eventualities if something like a ransomware or an attack happens? Is something that people cannot say it with confidence that we are well prepared.
Correct. I mean, you look at the SolarWinds. I mean, that particular attack and that particular supply chain related, debacle which happened. No matter how much of these 9, no matter how much money you're spending on these 9 activities, if you're trying to do these 9 activities at the tail end of your release cycle, that kind of thing is never going to get caught. That kind of thing is never going to get arrested, right? So what is happening? I mean, going back to your point of this, compliance for the sake of compliance, right? If you really wanted, if you really want to just create a certification or just create a certificate or checklist which is going to make you look compliant, you will take all of these 9 activities and you will do it in once during the cycle, and you're going to be happy that because you can show that piece of paper to somebody that we have done these 9 things. But if you really want to protect and defend, then you will take these 9 activities and sort of figure out is that how do I embed these 9 activities and how do I spread them out throughout my development cycle. And that's the difference, is that people who only want to do the compliance for the sake of compliance, they will actually get it done as a hygiene activity towards the tail end. And people who really want to defend the organization, they will take these 9 activities, convert that into a well-run AppSec program, and try doing it in automated fashion across the development life cycle. Now, what security works, you can do with within the DevOps cycle. I mean, within the DevOps infrastructure, So because DevOps is something which is actually happening. I mean, no matter whether you recognize it or you don't recognize. Actually, the funny part is that a lot of organizations, they don't realize that even if there's a lack of formal DevOps adoption, their development units are automatically adopting the modern tool infrastructure for the DevOps here. So DevOps is happening in your organization, whether you recognize it, or whether there's a funded or a specific initiative or not. Right? So this is the famous Gartner, image, which basically talks about is that how you could do different type of security tools, how you could integrate different type of security tools at different part of your DevOps cycle. Right? So if you look at the left hand side, you could actually do simple things like do the integrate do the plugins into your ID, into your development. So a developer will get to know, like right in the beginning, that what kind of code level mistakes are getting made, or what kind of code level things are getting done, which are going to potentially include a vulnerability into the software, right? Or you're going to potentially introduce a vulnerability into the software. You could do in early builds, you could do the penetration testing, you could do the static testing, or you could do the penetration testing, right? Somewhere in the middle of this one, there are things which are related to build security in terms of, the build which is actually getting tested. That is the same build which is getting delivered into the production. You could do activities related to that. And then if you look at the right part of the slide, you could actually integrate the monitoring tools within your application in the production environment, so that you could observe the behavior of the application in the production environment and take certain security measures, take certain protection defensive measures based on the application behavior. Right? So this is the tool chain which has been recognized, which has been sort of almost kind of popularized by Gartner, but not yet fully adopted in the industry. Right?
So Rajiv, one question is, if you think that for a small mid-size segment of company, I
Correct.
know Gartner predicts it, these are all deemed to be 1 to 10, much more robust building that. But
Correct.
to a level of, will this also differ from a magnitude of the company size, and it's a line of business part of it when it comes to implementation strategy?
Slightly.
Would you see that? Would you
Go
see
ahead.
that as a sometime we see that it's a ocean to boil to
Yes.
certain
Yes.
extent, to make it simplified and make it relevant for a small company of a stature that doesn't have much more of things. So you're saying that it will still differ from a size of the company also.
Yes. So when you start integrating the security in the DevOps cycle, a lot of things that depend. They depend on the size of the company. They also depend on the software complexity. I mean, how complex your software is, or how rapid your software is. But then there are things which are related to integrating security into your software development cycle or the DevOps cycle, which could be done by every organization. Which could be, so let's take an example. Some of the things which are related to penetration testing, they could be easily integrated in your build process. It doesn't matter, whether you are actually using a exceptionally modern DevOps tools infrastructure, or you're still the old setup. So it is subjective, in terms of what do you do to introduce or integrate security in your DevOps cycle. It is little subjective in terms of what is the size of your organization, how many applications you got, what is the complexity of application, and how much you can take on. It is little subjective. But then excluding certain part of the markets and saying that if you are only a 100 people company or a 500 people company, then you can't do anything related to DevSecOps. That is not right. Everybody in the industry could do certain level of adoption of the DevSecOps. It depends on certain factors. It depends on the size. It depends on how much you can take on. Depends on funding. Depends on application complexity. Right. It depends on your ability to introduce a new set of process. Right. So now, let's take a look at the myths of the complexity. I mean, one of the things I've seen that particularly in the mid-sized organization or slightly bigger organization, let's say mid to large organization, that a lot of time I've seen people, they looking at the DevSecOps as something which is meant for advanced companies, meant for advanced infrastructure, meant for certain size of companies. So why these myths are there? Let's take a look at why these myths are there. So one of the thing is that the range of tools which are there, in the DevOps infrastructure, generally they are not in control of the security team. Right? The tools which are there in the DevOps infrastructure, the whole of the DevOps infrastructure, that's not really in the control of the security team. Right? That's going to be usually in control of the IT team or the production operations team or the development team. Right? So that is one thing which actually sort of creates this myth of complexity, right? Because security team looks at those things, they don't own it, they can't go and actually start making changes there. Right?
Right.
Second thing is the mind-boggling number of DevOps tool. I mean, even in an ordinary or a mid-level maturity DevOps environment, the likelihood of number of tools related to DevOps is somewhere between 7 to 10.
Right.
So when you have got those many DevOps tools as part of your DevOps infrastructure, options which are there for the security tools, there's just too many. Right? So second myth of complexity is that how do I figure out what are the right tools for me? Because there are 7 different things in my DevOps infrastructure, and how do I know which tool should actually go with what? Right? So this is the second thing which actually creates the myth of complexity. Right? The third thing is that when you start doing things related to DevSecOps, when you start integrating security in your DevOps, the vulnerabilities which are detected, they need to be triaged and accepted, because if they're not getting triaged and they're not getting accepted in time, there's no purpose of running a scanner. There's no purpose of running a security tool. Right? So that is another thing, which actually sort of, people, they don't understand, they think that there'll be just too much to handle. Right? So if you see the problem is related to 3 things. One is culture. Have you sort of taken a lot of people, they translate DevSecOps only in terms of technology, right? But fundamentally, a lot of DevSecOps is related to the culture, building a culture of the security and integrating that culture into your development, into your development cycle, into your development organization. Right? Second is the problem, is related to the skills. A lot of time people, they try doing everything in-house, and that when you start handling everything in-house, then obviously it's going to seem very complex, because having all the people who would understand every tool which could be, picked up for various parts of your DevOps infrastructure, you're not going to have that kind of skill set in-house, right? So the second problem is that people trying to do the DevSecOps completely in-house, right? And third is the lack of automation or lack of view of automation. If you don't know how to actually, if you don't have that a specific dimension of thinking that I'm going to actually focus on automation from the beginning, then the whole process of the DevSecOps is going to look very complex. So these are the 3 things, and majority of the time, these 3 things, they are more, myth, because these are wrong. There's an incorrect perspective in the organization than the reality. Right? Now let's see, how to start and how to build up. Right? And particularly, this is particularly true for the mid-sized organization. So a lot of time, what really happens is people, they get onto the journey of the DevSecOps, and they suddenly start thinking about, I'm going to integrate 10 scanners into this particular stage or these 3 stages of the development cycle. Nothing could actually be more wrong than that. You got to start very, very small. You need to think about where I can go in my development cycle, where I can introduce a small thing where I can actually show the impact right away, where I can actually make, where I can introduce a tool where the tool acceptance is not going to be a big problem. So start with the simple things. So start with integrating security plugins in your IDE, because a developer, nothing is going to make a developer more happy when somebody actually a pop-up appears on his screen and says that you are about to check in the code, and this code actually has got this particular thing which could potentially be a vulnerability or introduce a vulnerability. If you tell developer that thing right at the time of the checking, nothing is going to make you more happy. Right? So start small. That's first thing. Right? Second is, make DevSecOps friends of developer. Build a culture. So when you start integrating the tool, don't look at the tools integration into the DevOps as a technology problem. It's going to be actually more of a more of an acceptance problem, a culture problem. So build a culture. Every time you're integrating a tool or every time introducing a process, you take development organization in confidence and have them realize that, how this is going to solve their problem, how it's going to actually reduce their effort and their time down the line.
Right.
Another three things which are important. A lot of people, they start looking at, let's say, 10 tools, but they don't really have a roadmap for the tools. So, they have an idea about integrating these 10 tools because these are great scanners from great vendors and all, but they don't really have a roadmap in terms of which tool should be integrated at what stage into the DevOps infrastructure. So build a roadmap, right? And that is something which is going to take a skill set. That is something which is going to take effort. If need be, you need to take external help. You need to take an expert's help or a consultant help to build out a roadmap. That these are the tools which are going to get integrated at various stages in this sequence because of these factors. Present data, right? So a lot of organizations, when they start building DevSecOps capabilities, they focus mostly onto the tools integration and then spitting out vulnerabilities, but they don't really sort of present the data back to the development organization, back to the overall organization. So collect the statistics about the vulnerabilities and how it is actually impacting the organization, how it is actually enabling organization deliver more secure code. Present that often. And another thing is that automate, focus on the response automation right from the beginning. A lot of time, when people, they start actually integrating things, integrating security into the DevOps process, they look at automation only as a post fact. Once the integration is going to be done, then I'm going to start looking at opportunities to automate things. So by then it is mostly too late. So look at the automation of right from the beginning of the DevSecOps adoption. Eventually, all of this has to be, if your DevSecOps adoption is only for identifying vulnerabilities, it's going to always fail. Your DevSecOps adoption has to be for secure code delivery. You have to do things from the process point of view, from the culture point of view, and from the technology point of view to help organization deliver secure code every time and deliver secure code at every time with lower cost. So this is the way to sort of...
That's a very important point that you mentioned, Rajiv, because everybody today talks about DevSecOps for addressing vulnerability. Okay, what is my CVE? What is my CWE? That's the only thing that they think, because when a flag happens, when I do a static code analyzer using SonarQube, it tells me that these are CVEs and CWE. So all that I'm trying to do is making sure that I address that and I'm good with that. So we are still stuck with the same mentality of like the auditor whom provides a non-conformance, we are trying to just fix it without even taking the next step and saying, well, this is just one part of the game. The game is more to be more holistic in looking at this end-to-end picture of it.
Correct.
Very valid.
So if the secure code delivery is not the primary theme of your DevSecOps story, it's going to always fail. In the long term, it's going to always fail. Your development organization is going to ensure that your DevSecOps effort, they're going to fail. So your communication back to the organization, your organization coordination, all of that has to be geared with the secure code delivery as a primary theme of DevSecOps. Now, what to avoid during the DevSecOps journey? I mean, this is something, a lot of people, we have seen this, the pitfalls in the industry. We have seen people making mistakes. So first, let's talk about the big don'ts. A lot of time people, they call DevSecOps as an automation project, and the reason they have got this view because they don't look beyond integrating the tools into the DevOps infrastructure. Their view of the DevSecOps is that we're going to integrate tools into the DevOps, and that's going to need certain level of automation. Nothing could be more wrong than that, So don't ever call it automation project because that really, really puts off the entire development organization. A lot of time people they say that this is going to be a dev team's job. That's a critical mistake. Even if the tools you're recommending, and even if the integration is going to get done, let's say by IT operations people or the production operations people, even then, don't shift the ball into their court. I mean, don't call it a dev team's job. And the last thing is that a lot of people, they start the DevSecOps introduction to the company by scanners, introducing the scanner into the game. Right? So that's another big mistake, because when you start with a scanner and when you start churning out just the vulnerabilities or another piece of workload onto the development organization, they're going to make sure that your initiative fails. So these are the big don'ts. I mean, I've seen a lot of organizations making this mistake. Now, if you look at what are the things to avoid? One, integrating scanners without the context. Don't just have a laundry list of scanners which are integrated into your DevOps process, because that's going to just create a lot of repetition. It's also going to create a lot of false positive. Second is creating notifications without the filter. So when you are integrating so many tools across the chain, obviously there are going to be notifications, and a lot of those notifications, they would need a specific triaging, right? A specific filtering, right? So a lot of time DevSecOps actually fails because it's going to keep on notifying things back to the development lead or development head without any filter, without any false positive removals. Another thing which could actually derail your DevSecOps journey very, very fast is that every detected vulnerability is getting pushed very hard back into the development organization. So if you don't really have a model of deciding which vulnerabilities you're going to prioritize and how you're going to take the vulnerabilities back into the development organization and get that prioritized in a certain way, it is bound to fail. Lack of
severity you mentioned around vulnerability. So what happens, Rajeev, is based on what I see, the InfoSec team or the GIS team, the Global Information Security team, looks at it saying these are the vulnerabilities, so what are you going to do? So who do you think will have to prioritize it? Knowing that there are so much things to do, where would the ownership lie when it comes to prioritizing which vulnerabilities to address, and what is the sequence in which it has to be addressed? Who would make that decision in a company?
So generally, the one common mistake I see people making is specifically in the context of DevSecOps, when the vulnerabilities are actually getting pushed over to developers. One common mistake is that the default severity is being actually taken, as a cause. So default severity is generally based on certain factors. It could be based on OWASP model. It could be based on some static, set of values or attributes. But the default severity is mostly technical in nature. Right? So if you have not done the risk profiling of your application, and if you have not actually leveled your vulnerabilities based on the risk profile of an application, then the likelihood of vulnerability getting accepted by the business and by the development team is going to be very, very low. Right? So I see there's an effort needed. There's a conscious effort needed when you get onto the DevSecOps, because you will identify more things. There's a conscious effort needed in leveling your vulnerabilities in the context of the business impact, and that is something which rarely happens. Mostly you'll find a laundry list of vulnerabilities with the default severity allocated getting pushed into the bug tracker. Right. And that is something, and that's where things they start failing.
Sure.
Right. So these are the things which one needs to avoid during the DevSecOps ops journey. I mean, this is something we have sort of seen pretty many often. This is something, these are common pitfalls, and some of these things are known. Some of these things are known, and still people, they fall into this trap. So now let's take a look at how does a fully integrated DevSecOps looks like. This is something not necessarily that every organization will do it, not necessarily that every organization is gonna need it, right? But if you are really building a fully integrated DevSecOps, then this is how the flow is going to look like, and this is how various type of tools, various type of processes will be integrated as part of your development life cycle, as part of your DevOps infrastructure. So not going to go into the detail, but these are tentative 17 things which are going to happen, in the development loop, on a continuous basis, if you really fully integrate the the security into your DevOps infrastructure, DevOps process, and convert that into the DevSecOps. So this is Suresh. This is my view. I mean, all of this is actually based on certain observations collected over the number of years, right? And these are the things which organizations they need to take a look at, right? When they think about the DevSecOps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is spot on, and I'm glad that we are almost in the fag end to do a quick question and answer. So if you're okay, we can shoot you some questions from the audience who have reached out to us.
Sure.
Right. So if we can make this screen full, I mean, so what kind of resources do you suggest for someone who's trying to start with the DevSecOps journey? Where do they start? Sometimes that's a big push to where do we start and where do we need to begin? What kind of resources are available for people to take advantage of understanding more about DevSecOps?
So one common challenge I see is people when they start the DevSecOps journey. One of the first and foremost requirement on the technology front is integration. Right? So that needs that needs automation as skill, and that needs automation as skill actually in the security team itself. So because that cannot be just passed on to the development organization. You can take the help from the development organization, but if you ask them to handle the complete integration of a security tool into their infrastructure, that's not going to work, right? So one skill set which organizations they need to look for and retain or build within the security teams is an ability to do automation. Right? Second is, it seems like for some organization, if they are small, or if they are mid-sized, it seems like, taking consulting help seems like too much, but that is actually not true. It is important for you for organizations to look for consulting help, and talk to the people who have done it, talk to the practitioners, talk to the people who can actually give you a sort of a unbiased view that how the DevSecOps can be adopted. Does it make sense? What would be the implications? What would be the challenges? So seeking help from the consultant is another important thing. Right? Third is people develop within the application security. If you have an application security unit in the organization, develop a skill set which are beyond penetration testing. Unfortunately, majority of the application security units, majority of the AppSec candidates or AppSec skills which are there in the organization is actually limited to the penetration testing, and one of the reasons is that majority of that skill set is acquired by hiring bug bounty hunters, right? So it actually takes certain amount of effort to take a penetration tester and convert him into a proper AppSec engineer, where he can go beyond penetration testing, understand application security in the context of in a bigger context. So these are things which are needed in terms of skills, in terms of who do they need to hire, what kind of team they need to build.
Excellent. So the next question, part of it is, in terms of DevSecOps, we have been traditionally focusing on the on-prem aspects of it. Now with cloud, with containers, with microservices, how does it change in the dimension of gravity which we need to focus on security aspect? Because it could be a container image that needs to be sensitized before it could be reused, because everybody is using from the registry and we do not know who has actually pushed it. And even for a Terraform, for that matter, I can just modify the text file, and that could actually become much more a difficult problem for me to handle it. So what is the level of complexity that you see organizations are need to be equipped when moving towards cloud natives, containers, and microservices?
So when things are actually moving to the cloud, I mean, what is happening with the cloud adoption is the DevOps is actually becoming a lot more faster, The adoption of the DevOps is actually becoming a lot more faster. I mean, if it had taken, let's say, X time for an organization to really get onto the journey of the DevOps and adopt some relatively modern infrastructure for release management, it is going to probably take only 0.25x time, so to do the same in the cloud. And one of the reasons is that a lot of this cloud, a lot of the modern day cloud, they do come with pre-built, pre-integrated DevOps tools and infrastructures. So if I need to pick up a particular DevOps tool, let's say if I'm operating in AWS or if I'm operating in Google Cloud, if I need to pick up a specific DevOps tool, the possibility of that DevOps tool already being available as a service in the cloud is very, very high. Right? So DevOps adoption is actually getting is sped up in the cloud. Right? Now, the complexity which is introduced, by the cloud in the context of DevSecOps, the complexity is more related to actually a good understanding of the model. It's not a technical complexity. Actually, if I look at the technically doing the DevSecOps in the cloud is a lot more simpler. Right? But then a lot of organizations, at least the security teams in a lot of organizations, they have not yet got a good hang of overall infrastructure model of the cloud. They have got relatively they have got compromised understanding of overall model of the cloud, and what is the infrastructure model, what is the security model of the cloud. And because of that, it seems more complex. Technology-wise, I think implementing DevSecOps is going to be a lot less challenging when you move to the cloud.
Excellent. So last final question, Rajeev, is that in terms of what do you think is the future of DevSecOps? Because we see that the whole trend, we started off with Agile, then we moved on to DevOps. Now DevSecOps seems to be a next magic wand. So what is your future forecast about DevSecOps, and what would be for IT professionals who are picking up these core skills to be more relevant in the digital age? Because this has been always a question of, where should I spend my time and effort in building skills that will be more relevant in the digital age? So what would be your advice for professionals, and what does the future of DevSecOps look like?
See, DevOps transformation is something which has been around for roughly about a decade now, but at least about roughly about 7-8 years, it has been very, very intense. So there's nothing which is actually stopping. There's nothing which is going to slow down the adoption of the DevOps. If I look at the industry, knowingly, unknowingly, more than 50% of the industry has moved on to the DevOps model. Right?
Right.
Now the organizations who can actually keep on continuing with the static models or the VAPT based models of application security, those organizations, they will get into problems. They will get into challenges. But then I think this is the nature of the industry. You remember that the classical 2000 problem, right? The millennium problem.
Right.
So despite the fact that companies, they knew it for 20 years, majority of the companies they got it sorted out only in the last 2 years or last 3 years. So I see DevSecOps is not something which is an option for the industry. DevSecOps is something which needs to happen, right? And it needs to happen sooner than later. So some companies, they would actually they will become serious about the DevSecOps, or they would start doing, they would start committing funds to DevSecOps only when they actually get affected by attacks like SolarWinds. And some companies, they would be smart about it and do it proactively. But I see majority of the industry shifting to the DevSecOps within the next 5 to 7 years. Now coming to this skill set, I see serious lack of skill set when it comes to application security. A serious lack of skill set in the context of DevSecOps. Majority of industry today is VAPT, and unfortunately, majority of the industry is VAPT because it traditionally came from the network background, because that's the model which actually continued. So majority of the industry is VAPT, and majority of the AppSec skill set today is penetration testing. And if the people who are great penetration tester, they need to upskill themselves, in terms of understanding the entire development life cycle, understanding the DevOps infrastructure, understanding what is the meaning of securing the software in conjunction with when it is getting built, instead of looking at the security of the software only as an atomic or one-time activity. Right? So I believe that majority there's an opportunity. There's a huge opportunity for a lot of people who are web testers or penetration testers to up-level themselves by focusing on a specific skills related to the DevSecOps, specifically focusing on understanding DevOps and understanding the bigger picture of application security than just the penetration testing.
Right. Excellent. I think that's a very enlightening session, Rajiv, for sharing your perspectives and industry trends around demystifying DevSecOps. I'm sure that the viewers would have got a good amount of takeaways for today. And if people want to know more about you and the Castellum Labs, what would be a good resource to reach out? Because you do a lot of work around the project space.
Absolutely. I mean, we you can write us. I mean, there's a mail here on the screen. You can write us on that mail, and you can also come to our LinkedIn page. It's a super active LinkedIn page, and we actually publish a lot of information, knowledge pieces, a lot of articles, lot of information about the DevSecOps. We publish a lot of things about what are we doing in application security, the new model, new frameworks we are coming up in application security. So these are the ways to reach out to us.
Thanks, Rajiv, because that's one of the reasons that we wanted you to be here, because you've been on a continuous pursuit of sharing some great graphics information on the LinkedIn forum that we found it to be very useful, and we thought this would be a good session for us to share it with people. So if you are one of them and if you want to get in touch with us, please contact us for the sessions more if you want. You can reach out to us at info@TaUB Solutions, and you can reach out to Castellum Labs at enquiry@castellumlabs.com. And we hope that this was useful and you can take some of these learnings back to your workplace, part of it. We, as part of TaUB Solutions, is always proud to partner with experts and practitioners who bring in real-world content on the IT management best practices like Agile, DevOps, IT service management, DevSecOps. So I hope to see you all again in the next 2 weeks' time. Until then, stay safe, and thank you so much, everyone, again for today's event. So if you have any questions that we have not answered, please put it on the chat on the window. Then we will take it up as we start to answer some of these questions. Thank you so much, Rajiv, again.
All right. Thanks, Suresh.